Just a week after launching its public information campaign on water reform, the Murray Darling Basin Authority has moved into damage control, commissioning a new inquiry into the likely effects its proposed water cuts will have on rural communities. The new inquiry comes on top of a parliamentary committee announced late last week by Prime Minister Julia Gillard to look at the issue. Basin authorities have faced hostile crowds in 3 states who believe the proposed cuts of up to 37% will destroy some rural industries and communities. Basin Chairman Mike Taylor says the authority has heard loud and clear the call of regional communities for further research. Mike Sexton reports.
In the Murray-Darling Basin there are 4 states, 26 rivers, 2 million people, 25,000 wetlands, 40% of Australia's food production and not enough water to go around. Is the river over-allocated?
Yes, the river is, and it's no one's fault. This was done by governments, this wasn't done by individuals. We've basically developed the Murray-Darling Basin during a wetter than average period. We haven't understood the basin as a whole, and as a consequence we've actually over-allocated as a basin.
After proposing cuts in water use of up to 37% to save the rivers, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority now has the challenge of taking that message into the communities that will bear the brunt of the reductions. The response has been dramatic and at times aggressive. Jack Papageorgiou led a protest convoy of tractors to the meeting at Renmark in South Australia.
We're very proud of what we achieved, but we're not prepared to sit back and accept what is currently offered.
Get out of here and let us alone!
At Griffith in New South Wales, the 200-page Basin Plan Guide was reduced to ashes.
As an answer to this, you drongos, build more dams. Easy.
They might as well take the lot because we won't be viable.
So everybody gets a share of the bloody water. It's a national resource.
The hostile responses in just the first 4 meetings has produced 2 new inquiries, one in the Federal Parliament and another by the Basin Authority itself, to examine the social and economic impacts of the proposed cuts. Barry Croke drove from his farm in Naringaningaluk in northern Victoria to the meeting in Shepparton. Like farmers across the basin, for him the simple bottom line is less water means less production.
That paddock out there, last year I produced 36 tonne of dry matter out there last year. Now, if it wasn't watered, I might produce 3 tonne. Now, that's what happens if you take the water off.
He read in disbelief the Basin Report's estimate that the water cuts would result in 800 jobs being lost basin-wide.
There was a truck driver that used to spend probably 4 hours of his daily shift coming to and from our place carting milk. There were the people in the factory that processed 3.5 million litres of milk and all the marketing and transport of that. Now, that for dairying, well, there's about 2,000 dairy farms across northern Victoria, and that just multiplies.
Nowhere is water use more entwined with the economics of a town than in Renmark, near the South Australian-Victorian border, which is the oldest irrigation centre in the country. In 1887, 2 Canadians, William and George Chaffee, started the first irrigation farms here before crossing the border to do similar work in Mildura.
It became very successful right at the outset, and it became something of a fruit bowl for South Australia, in that there was grapes and then there was stone fruit and there was citrus, and they traded up and down the river from here in Renmark.
But the Riverland would be unrecognisable to the Chaffee brothers if they returned today. Gone are the inefficient systems of the past. In their place are drippers, pipes and filters that treat every drop as precious. In addition, farmers here have adhered to a cap on water use that means since 1968, South Australia has not increased the amount it takes from the Murray River.
For the last 40 years we've capped ourselves. We've used water on a high-value product, and that there should be recognition for the fact that we're very efficient and that we haven't been using more water for the last 40 years.
Ben Haslett grows citrus, grapes and almonds and has increased his yields by investing in more efficient water use.
Our expansion has been based on us putting in world-class infrastructure to allow us to expand by best practice water use.
According to the Basin Plan's own statistics, of the 22 regions, the highest yielding is the South Australian Murray, where the mean return per hectare is $9,176, almost 3 times the average. which is why some in Renmark believe it's unfair they face the same cuts as inefficient irrigators.
But in South Australia, we worked out about 30, 40 years ago, there was a limit to what we could take out of this river. And our government said, that's it, we're not taking any more. Over in the east, they continue to take water.
One of the reasons we need a basin plan is to have no borders approach to this, because many of the environmental assets, such as Chowler, the water that will service Chowler won't be generated in this state.
We are already efficient.
One of those at the Renmark meeting was Chris Byrne, who grows wine grapes. He doesn't want the debate to be mired by parochialism, but says efficiency gains can't be ignored. Farmers in other parts of the basin can access federal money to upgrade their infrastructure and use the savings to offset their water cuts.
Then it would suggest that those who've already invested their own funds over a long period of time, shown enormous innovation and leadership, are at a competitive disadvantage, and that's a major concern for us. We have to find ways of adequately recognising the early adopters and making sure that we don't just reward those who are able to benefit from some of the schemes that are being introduced as a result of the reforms across the Murray-Darling Basin.
But we think it's really important to look at this basin as a single basin, a no borders approach to the Murray-Darling Basin. And while some people have made efficiency gains early on, it's not anyone else's fault that they mightn't have made those efficiency gains, and we're looking at an equal solution at this stage.
The Basin Authority will resume its public meetings on Wednesday in Narrabri, New South Wales. Despite its desire to treat the basin as a whole, more than anything, the first week of forums has confirmed that unravelling 100 years of sectional interest will not be easy.
It's difficult for people to look at the reductions and see the immediate impact. This is ensuring that we've got a strong economic and social base for the Murray-Darling Basin well into the future.
That report from Mike Sexton.